I'm enjoying Sir James's visit to Churchill.
Churchill, that's how you say it, all together like that. I'd heard church and hill, but couldn't find either. All I could see was this big house.
You promised that you would give up all contact with this woman.
What a mistake you made marrying him. Too old to be governable, too young to die.
Lady Susan.
How dare you address me, sir? Be gone, or I will have you whipped.
Outrageous. Have you never met him?
No, I know him well. I would never speak to a stranger like that.
This film is a big reunion movie for you. It reunites you with Chloe Sevigny. It reunites you with Whit Stillman, and the three of you worked together, 15 years ago?
At least, maybe even more than that.
Yeah, in the last days of disco. So what was it like to come together with all of you again after all this time? So much has happened. You've all grown up. A lot of you started families.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, I think that was one of the things that was so extraordinary about this movie is, in particular, the movie that we first did together 16 or so years ago, more I think, was my first American movie I'd ever done in my whole life, and this was pre-internet and pre-anything. So America
You didn't have email back then either.
No, not at all, nothing. And so America was very, very foreign to me, and I remember being very anxious and nervous about coming out here and playing in America. And my goodness, I didn't really have very much experience, and so Whit and Chloe were really the ones that kind of, sort of pushed me into that world. And then all this time later, we find ourselves together, but we're sort of, everyone's in a kind of more English zone, which is, there was just kind of a lovely symmetry to that. That was really great. And, we work really well together. We really like working together, so.
Well, after you did The Last Days of Disco, your first American film, you went off in a very American direction, and then the whole action stuff came in, and you became with Underworld. And so this is sort of getting back to some of your earlier work, some of the more period work, the corsets, and Jane Austen, who you've done some of her work in the past before.
Yeah,
right?
That's right. I played Emma, I think not that long before I did Last Days of Disco. So yeah, it's lovely for me because obviously I feel very at home in this sort of world because this is what I started doing, and it's probably a little bit more close to my sensibility than the action movies are, which I still feel incredibly privileged and lucky. Whatever time period I'm doing, I seem to get very lucky with these, rather formidable women that I get to play. So,
if you're a fan of Jane Austen, what can you glean from Jane or about Jane in watching this film? Because this is from a novel that was technically unfinished, right?
This is, it's a novella, and it's an epistolary novel. It's all letters, and wasn't finished and wasn't published, actually. She wrote it when she was 20, and I think thought it was a bit frivolous and a bit racy and decided not to, publish it. And then I think 40 or 50 years later, her nephew published it. And I'm so glad that he did, because obviously, I'm fairly familiar with Jane Austen, but I really wasn't familiar with the novella at all, and I think a lot of people aren't. And there's a kind of modern feminist rejoicing in this woman's behaviour and single-mindedness and naughtiness.
She's a very modern woman. We picture women to be this way today in their thinking. When you think of Jane Austen, you think of women who are a little more prim and proper, and she was carrying on affairs.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
it was blatant in this movie, and that's not what a Jane Austen movie is about.
Yes, and on the whole, I think that's the big difference, is that she's kind of shameless, and she doesn't apologise for herself. And I love to see characters in the movies, especially a period character. It's so unusual. Who's completely unapologetically, kind of single-mindedly doing her thing, which she really is. So, excuse me for arriving this way. What a delightful family pose.